Very much, and good morning to you all. You heard we have host of people, technologists, the folks who have taken business a lot, and also people who have converted technology into a business. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and ask some questions to our panel members. So Piyush, I'll start off with you. Uh, you have been more than 2 decades into technology, worked with many companies, seen a lot of technologies coming in. So from where you see, what are the top technology trends as you see them today, evolving in front of us in 2023?
Thanks, Shiv, for that question, and thank you, Contact teams, for this wonderful get together. It's great to be with such eminent panelists here, right? Okay, so I would say I would like to go back in time and talk about how it was about 20 years back. How IT and technology was. At that time, we were probably looking at ways in which we can have application which can cater to our normal working, take in data and kind of give out data in terms of reports. So it was more in terms of MIS, and there was a lot of focus on hardware, on-prem hardware, how the infrastructure should be, redundancy, backups, etc. So I think for a long time we were onto how we need to work and how the applications are going to help us do that. We did not realize at that time that we were actually capturing a lot of information all the time. There was a lot of information being taken in. We were representing it in more of a static data, and we were kind of having insights basis that. But over the period of time, as we realized we have so much of data with us, we saw some business potential in it. We started thinking of analyzing it, looking at business intelligence as a tool. So we started developing, but of late, like let's say in last 5 years, things have drastically changed. Especially in last 2-3 years, where we were forced into a situation where we had to kind of automate ourselves, look at certain virtual solutions and connect. So the technology actually, it jumped tenfolds, which we would have gone probably done about 10 years back. We did in last 2 years. So with the advent of mobility, with more data coming in, I think we started realizing that we need to utilize these. To answer to your question, I would say now, with so much of data with us, and technologies like machine learning, AI, artificial intelligence, the business is now focusing on how to utilize this so that they can take decisions and focus on their main work, focus on what is their core business, not to get involved with hardware and application. Now you would see that you have such low code, no code kind of an application as well. Now that's something which is for the convenience of business so that they can actually focus. Now how AI is useful is because there is data, there is machine learning, over that there is business intelligence, but then we need to take some intelligent decisions. Our decisions are more biased. We could be probably more influenced with the kind of business which we are doing. So it is very important that we have a learned kind of a tool where it takes industry experience and gives us insights. So that ways we are also more competitive with the environment, and we can and it will give a healthy competitive kind of environment for us. Now how it is helping the others is like automation, another thing which helps us focus more on our business and create more value add. People can then spend more time on a productive work, which is again their core business. So AI is also assisting automation. How I would say is that in terms of bots, now we have these chat bots, especially voice bots have really come up during the pandemic in last 2 years. Why? Because people could not come to office and work. So we had these voice bots running, calling people for interest collection, let's say in financial business, or let's say what is due plus recovery. All those things were happening through voice bots. Now this amalgamation of technology and automation is what I see as the current trend. That's where we would be. We are no longer on to just capturing data. Now it's more of we've captured enough data. We have a lot of data with us. It is now how to utilize that data and actually get to insights and focus on our core business, then actually spend a lot of time on it. That's why we have now cloud. Cloud, a lot of people are moving on to cloud. Even smaller applications, more intense applications are also going on cloud because it's more secure. This is all evolved. So in 2 terms, I would say AI is my take, plus machine learning, which will help AI probably, and automation. Other technologies like metaverse and blockchain are something for the future, but currently, because it's still an untouched kind of a domain, but currently I would say it is more related to artificial intelligence. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Piyush, for that. So you touched upon a lot of technologies and you took me down the memory lane
Yeah.
when you talked about BI. BI is a tool and
Right.
data and all of that. So thanks for talking about all that. So let me turn to Rohit. Rohit, you have been on the cusp of banking and technology. A lot of technologies Piyush talked about. How do you see banking and financial domain in general leveraging all these technologies and accelerating banking in everyday life?
Sure. So thanks. So yeah, I feel very proud here to tell you that the last decade has been an unprecedented decade in Indian banking in terms of digital advancement. A few days back there was a famous speech from Invest India where I think most of us would have seen that, and it was that time then when everyone realized that we are now the number one in terms of digital payment. China, US put together are behind us. So that is the kind of digital advancement which has happened. I started my career as a software professional, worked in IT, and then post my MBA, joined banking almost 12 years back. And frankly speaking, first week into the banking, I was very disappointed. Most of the things were still paper oriented. Yes, there were systems. Every data, every information was maintained in the systems, but the customer interface was still paper oriented, right? And even the transactions were not real time. We used to tell them real time, but if you remember 10 years back, you used to make first payment on the NEFT, and then the beneficiary used to refresh and see whether I have sent the money to the right account or not. We were apprehensive about that. So I think the revolution started first with this Jan Dhan Yojana, where almost more than 50% of the Indian population got the Aadhaar OTP enabled bank accounts. Afterwards, there was demonetization, which actually helped us moving from the push to a pull mechanism where people were looking for the ways to do the digital banking. And thanks to the pandemic, because despite all the enablement of technology, what I have seen and we witnessed in the banking, there was a lot of inertia, especially the senior citizens. And frankly speaking, because I deal with multinationals, the foreign expats, quite surprisingly, they were very reluctant to shift to the technology side of it. And still we were getting checks, sign mismatch, transactions getting rejected. Now, if you see all these things put together, this is the time when almost 40% of the transactions in the banking are now digitized. And what we foresee probably in 3 to 5 years, more than 2/3 of the transactions would be digitized. This is one thing which we all generally feel from the retail banking perspective, but a lot more things have happened where the data have synchronized and integrated on the corporate banking. The Indian economy is still a very restricted economy. So there is not a free movement of foreign currency or the funds outside India. So when I joined at the time, you will believe, because if India is growing, we can grow only when we see a lot of FDIs coming in, and most of the MNCs establishing their manufacturing or businesses in India. Now, any payment you want to make outside India for imports of raw material or services or all, you need to wait for the custom documents. Everything has to be in original. They need to be verified. The data needs to be added up. Even a paisa here and there, and you were not allowed to make payments. These are the stringent FEMA guidelines we work into. And it was very frustrating for MNCs specifically to see how much time and how much documentation it takes to make these payments. Now, thanks to the regulator, the Reserve Bank of India, and their foresightedness, now the custom data is integrated with the banks, and it has become within a minute, just by putting in an Excel or by making a digital data, the payments just go through. So from those days, we have come to a very synchronized and integrated data. Things have become very simple in banking, and that saves a lot of time for for productive work, even the corporates and all. And aside to that, even banks have become now collaborative. We are sharing information with each other. There's a lot of data analytics which helps, and a lot of data integration which has happened. So I think earlier there were processes. Most of them were paper driven. Now the approach of banks is that also we are focused towards our customers. We are making our experiences for customer better. And I think now we can say that yes, banks are a technology, you know. In the last 5 years, there are a lot of APIs which banks have developed. And so most of the corporates do not need to log in into the banking and make the payments. Our banking interfaces are integrated with their ERPs. So when they are acknowledging or approving any payments, automatically these things are happening. And India has played a significant role in advancement. I think that will help a lot in the next decade when we see India becoming a manufacturing hub and more of the MNCs coming into us. I think such digital technologies will help us a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohit. I think you touched upon a lot of key points. One thing which I'm seeing a change. I started my career in early 2000, late 90s. We used to talk to anyone from Western countries, and we used to get awed about how technology, how evolved they are. And fast forward to this 2022, 23, you talk to someone from Western world and talk about what we are doing in India and what technologies and a combination of government and startups ecosystem, what it has brought a transformation. They are like, really, is this possible? And it's a very proud moment to be an Indian sitting there and talking about those things. And having talked about startups, I'll come to you, Ritesh. You work with BharatPe. And you have been someone who has been playing with data from quite some time. Data being one of the things which is probably, if not the most, but one of the most talked about thing nowadays. How do you look at data today and leverage it for either your business growth or customer satisfaction? So if you can talk a little bit about technology and how you are leveraging it, that will be great.
Yeah, sure. So it's out there. So data and analytics is being used. It's out there from a very long time. It's just that we are realizing that the potential it has to grow more in recent years. So today, if you're launching a product and you have a budget of say 50 lakhs, right? And if you're just going on and doing advertisement on Insta, YouTube, Google, if you don't have a data strategy, you will end up burning all the money in like 30 days with no customers on board, right? That's how it's set up. So you have to have a data strategy and analytics. You have to look at the data points and cater to the right audience in order to get your product successful. An example would be where a company realized the potential of data points and changed their strategy is Pixar. Now when, I don't know like if you have animation fans in the house, but when Toy Story 1 was launched, it was meant for kids. Toy Story 2 came out and it was successful as well, made $1 billion. But when they looked into the data, they saw that the storyline, the direction was all set up in a way that it caters to the children. When they saw the audience, they saw that it's like all adult male watching those movies, right? And they're very interested in the story of the toys and how they can relate it to their childhood. And that's where they changed their strategy. In Toy Story 3, they made it an adult movie. When I say adult, like it was based on human emotions, which caters to adult male. So you can see there's a hero, there's a villain, there's a climax, there are scenes where you can you get adrenaline rush that what's going to happen next. And that movie made billions of dollars. And it's still considered to be one of the best animation movies. Disney and Pixar changed their strategy after that, and they started building animation movies for adults. If you look at Big Hero 6, again a $1 billion movie, there was violent scene in the movie as well. So it was not for kids. So they changed their whole strategy. So they still had like animation movie coming for kids, but now they have figured out there's a separate fan base out there which they can cater to and make a lot of money. So yeah, in today's world, if you want to have a growth on your product or you want to have customer experience, you want to look into that what customer is doing, like what page he is clicking into. If you take an example of, I was working with a travel company before, we used to look into that, okay, there's a person who is coming and booking a Oyo hotel room from my website, totally fine. But he was going back and forth on a 5-star hotel and looking at the Taj property, right? And spending time on the page looking at, okay, there's a Taj hotel, it's costing me more, but never booked the Taj, always went back to and booked the Oyo. So for me, that's an opportunity that if I have some custom-made offer for this guy, I may convert him into a high-paying customer and like pitch him Taj like hotel. And that's how you figure out that what you can do in terms of growth and customer satisfaction by using data points. It's being used all along. Right now at BharatPay, we are using that data analytics. We give loans to the merchants who traditional banks, like they don't give loans out to those people because they don't have those many data points on them. But given they are using our QR, so we know that what their paying capacity is, so we can do our underwriting and give those small loans which are meaningful for them. Right, that's how you are using data and analytics in your growth and customer experience. I believe that it's already there, but we are with the new technologies that we are discussing in, it's gonna take a totally different shape. That it will reach to a place where if you don't have an analytics strategy in place, you'll be like just wasting your money on advertisement.
Thank you. Thank you, Ritesh. So let me move on, and Rupesh, I'll come to you and pick up the next, if not the most again, much talked about technology is AR. So how do you see this technology? How do you see it evolving in time to come? What are the use cases you are seeing around? If you can talk about that.
Sure. So if we look at enterprises, typically the hygiene was the first thing they looked at. So how do I integrate my internal processes and make data available to people inside the organization? So that was the level 1 of hygiene. Second, they looked at how can I integrate my supply chain. So necessarily my business partners. So if I have suppliers, if I am outsourcing some process, how can I get them on the same platform and interact with them through the systems is what the second one. The third piece where I got in touch with my customer. So the demand coming in, e-commerce might it be, or might it be even opportunities, to be captured on the system, and there is a certain amount of interaction going on between the customer and the enterprise. So all these three were serviced, and we're all talking about the last decade. So let me relate it back saying that last decade, okay? And then, a point came in where we were looking at where is it going next? And then when you analyze and look at the data, 80% of the people in any enterprise are people those who are not using systems. Okay, only 20% use systems which are at the back end. It might be the finance team, it might be somewhere being used in inventory, or it might be somewhere being used to plan production, things like that. Okay, same goes in banking. But the real problem is with the 80% people, those who are not on systems. These are people on the field. They might be doing customer support, they might be doing shop floor work as they are doing manufacturing production. They might be in warehouses trying to see material and making it available, picking material. So what is it that we can do to connect data with the frontline employees? Okay, obviously you cannot give them laptops and systems where they work and they operate. So we are, as you all know, leaders in connections, remote connections. So we extended the remote connection and got data to people who are not using systems. So now what necessarily they do is they use glasses. Okay, sounds sci-fi, but it is not. And I'll give you certain examples. They use monolens where the process or the task that they need to do appears in the monolens, and then they execute it. For instance, let's say Coca-Cola. Okay, so when there is a picking happening in the warehouse of Coca-Cola, all can imagine that there are so many SKUs that go in, and in one particular order there will be 10 line items. So the picker who is going in the warehouse sees directly which storage location, which bin tray he has to go to, and how many units of a particular SKU he has to pick up. In the earlier days, he used to do that using pen, paper, write it down, come back to the system and make the transaction in the system. Now what he's doing is, he is seeing it, he's picking it up, he's talking with the monolens, and then completing the transaction. And then, all of you might be thinking that is Coca-Cola, Western, talk Indian, okay? All of you will be surprised that, government has taken a leading position here. Okay, so when there is a maintenance happening of central railways, in a plant in Mumbai, the inspection of the wagon wheels, is today happening using monolenses. They are not doing it. So a 60-minute process, which was a pen paper driven process, has been brought down to 15 minutes because he sees the complete process in the monolens. He talks to the monolens and moves forward, takes videos, beautiful pictures with a 700% zoom that is available. So metaverse is real, it is happening. Dams, for that instance, we talk about dams being vulnerable. So there is a pre-monsoon and post-monsoon dam inspection happening. And that dam inspection, as you can imagine, is a 65-page procedure, which leads into a report. So you capture the data, lead it into a report, and imagine that happening. There are more than 2,000 dams in Maharashtra alone. And you're accounting to the seepages, leakages, jetting, which is the leakage happening at the dam, on pen and paper. And God forbid, if calamity happens, then you go into the post-mortem of it. So all of that today is happening using augmented reality, where the 65 pages is available, on process in the monolens. You don't have to carry pen, paper, sun, rain, wind. Just go there, take the reading. It automatically gets transferred into digital, and you can send it across to anyone. And at the same time, if that person standing there needs support, needs assistance, needs to get in touch with someone in the head office and show that there is heavy jetting happening here, something needs to be done immediately, standing there, he can immediately call, connect, show, take multiple people, and resolve the issue there and there. So it is real, it is happening, and something that I'm proud that we are being able to drive in the market today. Thanks.
No, thank you, Rupesh. Certainly, I wasn't aware that even Indian Railways are using that, which is great. Thank you so much for sharing. Suraj, let me come to you. A lot of these technologies and developers today turn to open source, and I know you have been a strong proponent of that. How do you see open source getting used? And I come from an enterprise which is a 153-year-old organization, doing a lot of what the folks talked about, but still when it comes to open source, we are all a little careful about it. So how do you see that we can overcome this when it comes to large enterprises, especially financial services, to deal with open source?
Thank you for asking this question. So if I just put myself as a tech lead or a developer where I have to innovate or I have to start developing something for the enterprise organization, the very first thing what I need, an operating system, right? And none other than the Linux is a favorable choice of the OS for developing the project. So I will go for OpenSUSE, Fedora, CentOS. All these are the open source operating system. The next thing I need a programming language where I can develop the software. I will go with the Java. If I need to, like Rohit was pointing out that API, if I have to build the API, I will go with Spring Boot kind of technology. I will go with the Tomcat. I need a database. I will go with the Postgres. I will go with the Cassandra. If I need to secure my system, web application, there is OWASP top 10 security guidelines. That's still open. If I am security enthusiast, if I have to go for security testing, pen testing, I will go with the Kali Linux, right? So all these names, what you hear is the open source. If I go with the event-driven system, I will go with a Kafka, that is Apache, that's open source. So you just name it. Wherever you are innovating, there is an open source. So I think the open source is the key tool to help developers to innovate where really it matters. And when it comes to delivering a customer the real experience, superlative experience, optimizing the IT operations, and obviously increasing the developers' efficiency and their experience, open source is there. The way, the speed at which the open source innovations are happening, that is really enabling developers to push the boundaries which help them to innovate anywhere. So I have a couple of data figures which has been surveyed across 1,000 developers within the APJ region, and it says 18% feels improved agility to deliver digital innovation to the business. 13% says ability to leverage innovation in the open source community. And 16% quoted that increased ability to attract skilled creative developers. So everything is happening within the open source space. And the one thing which I would like to say is that when we are concerned about the operating this open source, that is just the perception. And in the last decade, if you identify that, that perception has really changed. And now, interestingly, if you will find out that the open source is the key topic for the enterprise to capture the security problem. So this is the way we see this one, how far the open source has come, and this is the future. There is no doubt about that one. And thank you very much for asking this question.
Sure. Thank you, Suraj. So, Mitish, I'll come to you next, talking about enterprise concerns, security, etc. You come from an application security specialization. How do you see that has evolved, and how do you think from an application development standpoint it can be integrated into the dev cycle itself?
Thanks for asking this question, Chief. We are all talking digital, right? All of us are going through the digital space, digital transformation, irrespective of the size, shape, scale, industry that we are in, right? So we are all talking digital at the end of the day. When we talk of digital, means we are talking technology, right? So what we are doing, we are trying to automate, as Rohit and eminent other panels said, that we are trying to automate all the processes digitally, means we are implementing technology, right? When we are implementing these technologies in open source or even paid licensed versions, right? Security is at paramount, absolutely. Number two is that with digital coming in, the size of the data is ever growing. It's not going to stop. If you look at our personal lives, as well as what we do in office, we are actually playing with data, okay? Now, the two parts from an application security standpoint. DevOps, initially DevOps came in and said we need to have absolute automated system for deployment of these applications, testing these applications, scaling these applications. And cloud started also, when cloud came in, we also started looking at, oh, really we need now DevOps. So dev, development, and ops, okay? So that's DevOps. If you look at DevOps manifesto, the first thing it talks about collaboration, okay? How do we collaborate in the entire ecosystem that we work with? The next part came is DevSecOps, right? So development security, and security operations, okay? In that space, every piece of configuration also is part of DevSecOps now. It's not only development environment per se, okay? That means a piece of code. Even if we have configurations, that's are also part of DevSecOps. Now, when we are building these applications, we have to solve inherent vulnerabilities, which typically the developers need to address when they are coding. We all have processes like SDLC, we will follow the complete life cycle and so on and so forth. I call it secure development life cycle, not secure software development life cycle, okay? Because secure development life cycle means I am proactive. As a company, I want to ensure that I'm proactive. I don't want to find vulnerabilities and what the reports, vulnerability tools and PT and VAPT and all these words we use, but those are reactive. We find the report, we find the bugs, we find vulnerabilities, then we go and fix them. Then it goes into, again, development life cycle. So DevSecOps, when we start implementing, the first step is how do we secure the code and the lines of code. Classic example is graceful exit, buffer overflow, and some of these configurations, some of these coding mistakes that are done by the developer are captured with the SAST and the DAST tools that are there, typically SAST. We integrate with the IDA platform, and there it starts. When we look at this, the challenge is, objective of SAST tools is how do we help the developer to identify the issue then and there and fix it before it goes into production, right? So now security is inbuilt at the proactive layer per se. Now let's look at the manifesto of DevSecOps. It again talks about collaboration, but it talks about the SAST, DAST, application, shift left. Everybody says shift left, but security also has to shift left. It can't be left isolated at one point somewhere in the life cycle and then comes back in a reactive state, right? So then comes in, how are we managing the consumable APIs? We are all now in the connected world, and those APIs have to be secured. Applications have to scale. The third part comes in continuous monitoring, right? So we all have SOC operations and NOC operations. Now when we look at, at end of the day, the maturity level at the infrastructure layer of security has been significantly achieved. We have all the platforms, tools, and so on and so forth. Now we are looking at the infrastructure layer. Since it's done, we are looking at the application layer. And that's where all of us have to, we will have to be ourselves, get into the CI/CD pipeline, get security into CI/CD pipeline, and implement DevSecOps so that the applications are protected, okay? That's the second part. And now the third part is skilling. Obviously, we all know the shortage of skilling of security resources, right? It is on the infrastructure side, but application security side is something we will need to skill the developers to think about security when they write an application, okay? That is where the first step starts with, and I will leave it at that. Otherwise, this is a massive topic, and we will just keep talking about it.
I can see the passion coming in, Mitesh. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anvay, you come from grid control, very, very specialized area. When you look at security and when you look at it at level of deployment and operations, at grid control, how do you operationalize that?
Yeah, thank you, Shiv. And first of all, thank you, the entire audience and the organizers, for creating this type of a platform for discussion. A lot of discussion on technology front. And I would rather like to drive you through a totally different type of industry. We at Grid Controller of India, we are basically, we are the apex body for power system control, where we basically our target is to create a secured and balanced operation of the national grid and matching the load and generation. When you talk about a lot of technology, the application of AI, the analytics for basically customer satisfaction, we talk about the same thing for having a real-time visualization of the entire grid and to have a proactive sort of corrective measures wherever there is a change in the grid, and that has to be done in a very real-time manner. Now, this entire system operation as well as the market in India has evolved with the evolution of technology, and we are bound to adapt those technologies. We think of those days maybe 15, 20 years back when our control centers were equipped with some signs, maybe few parameters of the voltage, few parameters of the frequency, and were, trying to operate the grid in a secured manner. From that, we have gone to implementation of supervisory controls and data acquisition, where we were starting collecting data from across India from a very remote station also in say around 10-second per interval. Then we have moved on to from in collection of data 40 samples per second. So in 250 millisecond interval. So you can see the jump of the volume of data we created. Now, obviously those data we need to convert to an insight, and that too on a real-time basis. Because in electricity, you cannot afford to lose even seconds that could lead to a catastrophe. So the perspective is now implementation of those applications, those automations, to first of all, to have a real-time benefit, and to secure that so that the integrity of the information is maintained, so that the decision making is not, cannot be tampered through various external sort of malicious activities. And this entire journey, this entire thought of even, the OT system the operational technology systems can be influenced by the, malicious attackers, came in around 2010, 11 when, nuclear stations of Ukraine, maybe the Stuxnet attack, all those things happened. I'm not going to all those details, but that time we also realized that when we are deploying certain automation, and that automation is integrating the remotest part of India. Imagine a renewable energy generator, even imagine a wind generator located at maybe a deep somewhere in Rajasthan or maybe at Tamil Nadu, and their information is flowing to my control center at Delhi or maybe at Bangalore. And we are monitoring that, we are instructing them for necessary corrections, and that too on a real-time basis. So you can imagine the complexity of that entire thing and the security requirement of that. So what we are trying to do now is basically, we have identified three major verticals. One obviously is the administrative controls. So Government of India has made a lot of changes in that. There are CEA guidelines being published which talk about the security deployments. There are certain directions. So there are bodies like sectoral CERT, we are the CERT grid operator. So we are working on those gamut and trying to deploy things. Second vertical is obviously the various security implementations, like implementation of next generation firewall, even in OT system, implementation of technologies like data diode, etc., for integrating our IT/OT. And third, which has not been touched yet maybe in this discussion, but maybe one of the most important vertical is manpower, is basically training the people, is basically making them aware of the security risks, and equipping them with the latest technology. So these are the things how we are basically integrating and how we are basically trying to ensure the security in the area.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At least I personally take it for granted that electricity will be there at home all the time. Seems like a lot of technology and work goes behind that, so thank you for that. One thing Anvay touched upon, Rupesh, is IoT. And that's something I realized we have not touched a little bit. So do you want to talk about what kind of use cases you are seeing, what else is happening, and where do we go from where we are on IoT right now?
Sure. So, lot of devices that we use, okay, which have been created, in the earlier generation. Okay, so I will not talk about the new tech, which is anyway smart, but lot of devices which are necessarily software-hardware combinations, okay, are operating. Okay, and now the era is coming where those products need to become smarter. Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say during COVID, okay, you have so many patients coming into the hospital. Doctors or technicians or maintenance people cannot actually be present in the hospital all the time, okay, or the diagnostic center. Siemens, we know is a healthcare expert manufacturing CT scan and MRI machines. So, problem gives opportunities, and, there is where tech comes to and help, where, we embedded, our technology into Siemens and made their CT and MRI machines IoT enabled. So what it means is that now you can take a remote access, carry the procedure with only the patient and probably one caretaker being there remotely. At the same time, if the Siemens machine goes bad, some software needs to be upgraded, now you can remotely log in and make it operational. And now you just extrapolate it. You have set-top boxes at home. Okay, in your offices you have projectors, right? You have printers, you have industrial printers, which are necessarily software-hardware combination. So just one technology piece added, you can operate and remotely maintain it. There is where in an industrial usage, I'm seeing a lot of these IoT discussions happening where everything is wanting to be operated remotely now. So that is one big trend which I'm seeing, and it's only growing from here.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Rupesh. And I'm seeing the ticker, and we are coming to an end of this whole thing. It is a good conversation, but I can't leave Rohit without a question. We started off saying that how was banking and how it evolved. So I'll come back to Rohit and say, Rohit, so many technologies we talked about. How do you see future of banking on back of all this?
Yeah, so see one thing, so earlier banking experience used to be a very rigid experience process-driven experience for the customer. There was not much which you could bargain or negotiate with the banks. You know, banks used to have certain process. You want this thing, 17 places you have to sign and all that. From there, you know, the shift with the help of digital and the data, I would say coherence with all that is happening is that we are now focusing on superior customer experience. So one thing for sure is that in the next 5 years, 10 years, you will see that banks will focus on making hyper-personalized customer experiences. That means the net banking or the banking will not be same for everyone. It will be customized to your need. Because, you know, with paper, there was a lot of restriction. If it is a paper, it has to be in a standard format, people have to read it and all that. But now when we have digitized it, it is, you know, your acceptance or your, the way you embrace technology may be different from the way I. So similarly, we have different set of customers. So now banks would like to make better APIs, better user interfaces so that customer can have personalized and superior experiences. One thing, if you see in the last 10 years, a lot of tech startups, B2C focused startups have come up, you know, like Zomato delivery or Netflix and all this, where thousands of people are making payments every second. Why there were no such ideas 10 years back? You know, the major restriction was 10 years back, there was no real-time settlement provided by the financial institutions. But now we are capable enough to make millions of transactions and give all these reports to the companies and they can auto-reconcile. Earlier it was manually driven, so there were limitations on the volume. So, you know, banking is a highly regulated industry and there are a lot of regulations from the Reserve Bank of India. We are not an open economy, our currency is not freely convertible. But now when RBI is gradually, you know, liberating themselves and they're finding that, okay, because India is a tech center, you know, we are, in the tech we are innovating most of the things. And it has really helped us moving so fast. So going further, it will be, you know, what we envisage, it will be completely paperless. There's no doubt about that. Now, 24/7, you know, if you want a loan, so rather than, you know, taking a day off and visiting the banks, you can do it anywhere. You can apply from your home. And these things have started. Now you can see banks have come up and just by logging into and sharing your details, you can take loans and you can do the documentation. Everything is digital. So going further, I believe, like you carry your PAN or you carry your Aadhaar or identity, similarly, you will carry your financial identity with you, you know. So rather than submitting your documents every time to the bank, you would have a centralized data which will keep all the financial information, and just by providing a consent, banks can access that online and can offer you the products. That is on the individual perspective, and from the bank's perspective, you know, the health of a country, or you can say the a growing economy, it is very important to have a healthy financial institutions and the healthy banks, because they are the lifeline, you know, they provide the funds. So a lot of data analytics is being used these days for the credit prudence, for finding out the early warning signals in terms of NPAs. And if you see in the last 3 to 5 years, the fresh NPA cases, you know, the bad loans are coming significantly down. So there are a lot of initiatives taken by the bank and the regulator on centralizing this information and using information available and the data available for a prudent, credit guidelines, and also to take actions in case of anything starts going bad. So those early signals will help. The third thing which I wish for is that I'm looking forward for more liberalized international transactions, so that these multinationals which are coming into India, and when we are thinking of us being a manufacturing hub, we make the platform very convenient for them, so that we become the true, the global hub, not only for manufacturing, services, technology, and everything. So with that, I would like.
Yeah, no, thank you. I realized we have not touched one thing, but maybe for some other day, when you talked about, international transactions being more liberal and all that. So maybe that technology will pick up some other day. But Mitesh, I think you had some point to make.
Just add to what Rohit said, right? Initially, 2008-9, it started with mobile banking, okay? And we were fortunate to work with Yes Bank and launch a pure wallet, which was called Nokia Money, okay? The next part came in that time when we actually designed UPI. RBI and as a regulator didn't understand. They thought we are, clearing agency, and we didn't get permission to do that. But it's fantastic where we are. And it all started in India, but some part of the credit should go back to Africa as well. And a country like Kenya, which we called fourth world, those days, all of that. M-Pesa is the biggest payment system, okay, in the entire world in terms of the transactions and number of size. Now, since we have launched in 6 countries, I can, the payment systems, I can tell you. Now where we are moving is faster payment systems. If you look at the Western world, they are adopting to faster payment systems across all types of transactions, including the forex, remittance. In fact, there are fintechs, interesting fintechs. They are doing 30-second money transfer from different countries into India as well. So, but everything is possible, but we are looking at faster payment system coming in, blockchain coming in for sure, for the consensus model, security in the blockchain in terms of consensus, and then we are looking at the AI/ML side of it. But faster payment systems across all transactions is coming in.
No, thank you so much. I feel that we can go on and probably spend the entire day here, but I'm going to stop here. So thank you so much for being here. Personally, I learned a lot of these things from this conversation. I always used to think that I'm a technologist, I know a lot. But thank you so much for sharing. I hope it was useful to the folks present here as well. If not anything else, you would have picked up some things which you can go either Google or ChatGPT and understand more about that. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate that, and it was a nice conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.